Every spring, millions of gardeners till up the same bed, buy the same seed packets, and start completely from scratch, when there is a whole category of vegetables that you plant exactly once and then harvest for the next 20 years without ever touching a seed packet again. These are perennial vegetables, and most home gardeners have never grown a single one of them, because the entire seed industry is built around selling you something you have to buy again every year. Stick around, because number 7 on this list is nearly indestructible, spreads on its own, and most gardeners have genuinely never even heard of it. Before we get into the list, here is what actually separates a perennial vegetable from the annuals you are used to growing. An annual, like a tomato or a zucchini, lives for one season, produces its crop, and dies, which means you are starting over from seed or transplant every single year. A perennial vegetable survives the winter underground or as a dormant crown and comes back on its own every spring, often producing more the longer it has been established. Some of these take a couple of years to really get going, but once they do, they can outlive the house you planted them next to. Think about it this way. Everything you plant this list versus everything you plant from a seed packet is not really a fair comparison at all, because one is a purchase you make every single spring for the rest of your gardening life, and the other is a purchase you make exactly once. Let's get into the list. Number 1, asparagus. This is the classic entry point into perennial vegetables, and for good reason. A well-maintained asparagus bed can keep producing tender spears for 20 to 30 years. The catch, and it is a real one, asparagus takes patience. Grown from crowns rather than seed, you are looking at about 2 to 3 years before you can start harvesting a full crop, because the plant needs that time to build a strong root system underground. Resist the urge to harvest heavily in those first couple of years, because every spear you leave uncut in year 1 and 2 is energy going back into the roots that will feed you for decades. Choose a sunny spot with well-drained soil from the very beginning, since asparagus genuinely does not transplant well once it is established, and this bed is meant to stay exactly where you put it for the rest of its life. It handles cold winters extremely well, since the plant actually needs a dormant period to reset for the following spring, which makes it a strong fit for a much wider range of climates than people often assume. Number 2, rhubarb. If asparagus is the classic entry point, rhubarb is the plant people tell stories about, because a single rhubarb crown, planted correctly, can keep producing for 50 years or more, easily outliving the gardener who planted it. It shows up early in spring, right when you are craving something fresh after winter, and the tart red stalks are what you actually eat. One critical safety note: the leaves are toxic and should never be eaten, only the stalks, so always cut the leaves off and compost them separately the moment you harvest. Give it a generous dedicated spot too. A mature rhubarb plant can spread 3 feet wide or more, and it genuinely resents being crowded by other plants competing for the same root space. It also prefers cooler climates and slightly acidic soil. So if you are gardening somewhere with mild, short winters, it may struggle to fully go dormant, which is worth checking before you commit a corner of your yard to it. Number 3, globe artichoke. This one is technically a giant thistle, and the part you eat is actually an unopened flower bud harvested before it blooms. In milder climates, it behaves as a true long-lived perennial, coming back reliably year after year, while in colder zones, it tends to act more like a short-lived perennial that may need replacing every few years or heavy winter mulching to survive. One plant produces multiple buds across a season, and it is one of the more dramatic architectural additions you can make to a vegetable garden. If you are in a colder zone and worried about winter survival, a thick layer of mulch over the crown in late fall is usually enough to carry the roots through, even if the top growth dies back completely. Number 4, sorrel. This is the fastest payoff on this entire list. Unlike asparagus and rhubarb, which make you wait years, sorrel can be harvested in its very first year, and it comes back reliably every spring after that with almost zero maintenance. It has a bright, lemony, tangy flavor that works beautifully chopped into soups, sauces, or salads, and a single established clump will keep producing fresh leaves from early spring all the way into fall. It is also one of the most forgiving plants on this list, tolerating partial shade and average soil, which makes it a genuinely good starting point if you are nervous about trying perennial vegetables for the first time. Number 5. Walking onions, sometimes called Egyptian walking onions. This is one of the strangest and most fun perennial vegetables you can grow, because instead of flowering normally, the plant produces a cluster of small bulblets at the top of the stalk. And as that stalk gets heavy and bends over, those bulblets touch the ground and root themselves, which means the plant literally walks across your garden bed year by year, spreading itself without you doing a single thing. You can harvest the base like a green onion or use the top bulblets, and once established, a walking onion patch is essentially self-perpetuating forever. The only real maintenance decision you have to make is whether to let it walk freely across a bed or stake the stalks upright to control exactly where it spreads next season. Quick pause here, because it is worth naming the trade-off running through this whole list. The plants that give you a payoff fastest, like sorrel and garlic chives, tend to be the gentlest, easiest to control. The plants that reward you most dramatically over the long haul, like asparagus and rhubarb, ask for patience up front. And a handful of these, which we are about to get into, will happily take over an entire bed if you let them, which is not a flaw. It just means you plant them with intention from day one instead of discovering the hard way. Number 6. Garlic chives. If you already grow regular chives, garlic chives are their perennial cousin with a mild garlic flavor instead of onion. They come back reliably every year, tolerate a wide range of soil conditions, and will happily self-seed if you let a few flower heads mature, which means a small patch can slowly expand into a much larger one over the years, without you buying a single additional plant. The white flower clusters in late summer are also a genuine pollinator magnet. So this is one of the rare vegetables on this list that pulls double duty as a decorative border plant too. Number 7. Jerusalem artichoke, also called sunchoke. This is the plant I mentioned at the start. It is not related to the globe artichoke at all. It is actually a relative of the sunflower, and it produces knobby underground tubers with a flavor somewhere between a potato and an artichoke heart. It is nearly indestructible, thrives in poor soil, tolerates neglect, and spreads aggressively through its tubers, which is exactly why most experienced gardeners plant it in a contained bed or a large buried container, because once it is in the ground, get every single tuber back out again is genuinely difficult. It also grows remarkably tall, often 6 feet or more, topped with cheerful yellow sunflower-like blooms, so plan for it to act as a backdrop or a screen rather than a front-row plant. Some gardeners deliberately plant it along a property line specifically because it doubles as a living privacy screen while quietly producing a fall harvest at the same time. Number 8. Sea kale. This is a coastal European perennial that most American gardeners have simply never encountered, which is a shame because it is one of the more elegant plants on this list. The young shoots, blanched by covering them from light in early spring, the same way you would force rhubarb, have a delicate flavor somewhere between kale, asparagus, and cabbage. It is fully perennial, extremely cold hardy, and once established in well-drained soil, it will keep producing for many years with very little input from you. The blanching step is optional if you do not mind a slightly stronger, more bitter flavor, but covering the crown with an upturned bucket for a few weeks in early spring is what produces those genuinely tender pale shoots that make this plant worth seeking out. Number 9. Good King Henry, also known as perennial spinach or wild spinach. This is a genuinely old crop, grown in European gardens for centuries before modern spinach varieties took over, and it has quietly fallen out of fashion despite being remarkably low maintenance. The young leaves taste similar to spinach and can be used the same way, sautéed, added to soups, or wilted into a dish. And unlike true spinach, which bolts and dies in summer heat, this plant simply keeps coming back year after year from the same root system. It prefers a little shade in hotter climates and rich, fertile soil, and once it settles in, A single clump can be lightly harvested for months without ever showing signs of stress. Number 10. Horseradish. This is the plant that rewards you the moment you plant it, and then absolutely never lets you forget it exists. Horseradish is famously vigorous. The root you plant will produce for decades, and it spreads through its root system aggressively enough that most gardeners deliberately confine it to a bottomless bucket sunk into the ground or a dedicated corner of the yard, well away from anything else. Harvest the root in fall for that classic, sharp, pungent flavor, and know that even if you think you dug up every piece, a small fragment left behind will almost certainly resprout next spring, whether you planned on it or not. Freshly grated horseradish is dramatically more potent than anything you will find in a jar at the grocery store, which is exactly why so many gardeners tolerate its aggressive spreading habit in exchange for that flavor. So here is how to actually build a perennial vegetable patch instead of just admiring this list and forgetting it by next weekend. Pick a permanent corner of your yard, one you are genuinely not going to till up or rearrange in a couple of years, because unlike your annual vegetable bed, this spot needs to stay put for a decade or more to pay off. Start with the fast payoff plants, sorrel and garlic chives, so you are eating something within the first year, while the slower plants, like asparagus and rhubarb, quietly build their root systems in the background. Give the aggressive spreaders, Jerusalem artichoke and horseradish, their own contained space from day one, because containing them at planting time is dramatically easier than trying to remove them later. Do that once, and you will genuinely be harvesting food from that same corner of your yard for longer than most people keep the same car. Take a look at your own yard this week and find that one permanent corner, because every year you wait to start is another year added onto the weight before asparagus and rhubarb start really producing for you. Even planting just 2 or 3 of these this season puts you years ahead of where you would be starting from scratch next spring, and unlike an annual vegetable garden, the work you put in now keeps paying you back long after you have forgotten how much effort the first planting actually took. If this just changed how you think about your vegetable garden, subscribe, because next week we are covering the 5 perennial fruit bushes that pair perfectly with this list and can turn one corner of your yard into a permanent food forest. See you in the next one.